I'm Dustin Harris with my colleague,
Sam Bailey.
and today this interview is going to be out of this world with...
I'm Carlos Fontanot.
I know that you were born in Mexico City. How did you get from Mexico City to NASA?
Well, it's a long story, but indeed I was born, grew up in Mexico City, went to school in Mexico City, started college. And my best friend had suffered an accident, and he was treated in Houston at the Texas Institute of Rehabilitation and Research. He had a spine injury. And his family asked me to come to Houston to support him, to help him out, which I did gladly. And then later on, he stayed in Houston to study, and that's how I ended up in Houston. I transferred my credits in college in Mexico to Houston, to University of Houston, finished my studies there, got a job, and that's how I ended up in Houston, and went to work for a television station, did television production, photography, and later on in my career, through the industry, a colleague called who was working at the Johnson Space Center at NASA and asked if I would be interested in interviewing for a job. At NASA, we have many jobs. We are not all astronauts or physicists or engineers. There are other disciplines. And imagery is very, very important in all industries, especially in the space industry, because how can you show, how can you explain something as complicated as the universe or as complicated as space if you don't have images? So that is what I do and how I got to work for NASA.
What inspired you to start working within TV and film?
Actually, my grandfather came to Mexico in 1903, a long time ago. He came from Germany, and he was an avid photographer, an amateur photographer. Back then, photography was quite different. You didn't have digital cameras, you didn't have iPads, telephones with cameras. You had a little box with a lens, with some film, and a photographer had to know what he was doing. You needed a light meter, and I was always fascinated by my grandfather. And so I always liked cameras, and I started taking photographs in high school. And although I started studying chemical engineering, photography, film was always my passion. And then eventually I changed from engineering to communications and got a degree in radio, TV, and film.
So, when you have been doing this for film and imaging for 25 years, what has been the most amazing thing that you've seen or done with NASA?
In general, the most amazing thing, the most rewarding thing about my job is the people I work with. It is amazing the level of professionalism and the level of knowledge, but more so that all of us are just humans. All of us are just people. And what is important is that we try, that we set our goals, and that we work towards our goals with passion. And that is what you find at NASA in general. So it is amazing to work with astronauts, talk to them about my specialty, if you will, which is imagery, and the passion that they have. And when you meet folks and have the opportunity to travel with folks like John Glenn, who is a national hero, and see how a man that is in his 70s, that's when I met him, has still so much passion for what he does for space and his enthusiasm. That's what's so rewarding and nourishing about the job that I have at NASA.
Have you ever had the opportunity to go into space yourself?
Unfortunately, no. There are only 500 human beings, about 500, little over 500 human beings that have been in space. That is not much. If you think about, we've been going to space for over 50 years, and only 500 people have been in space. Why? Space is not trivial. Space is very, very hard to get to, and then to stay in space. And it's pushing the limits. It's pushing the limits of technology. It's pushing the limits of life. So, unfortunately, I'm not an astronaut, not unfortunately, but no, I've not been to space. But in the future, there's probably opportunity for more people to go space. But it is quite a frontier. It is hard to get there.
What do you think would be the most exciting aspect of being able to go to space?
There are many aspects. It is, again, pushing the limits, pushing technology. It is exploration. It is learning about life. We learn about life on Earth in space. We learn how the human body adapts to space, how the human body reacts to zero gravity, to microgravity, and we can draw parallels. For instance, elderly people on Earth start having decalcification, osteoporosis in the bones. They start getting brittle. A similar, an analogous situation happens in space. When the astronauts go space, they float. So they don't put any weight on the legs, on your bones, on your muscles. So when the muscles, the legs, the bones start weakening, that's similar to what happens to the older people here. So we can draw parallels. We can study all that type of thing with human beings in space. We have also developed a great amount of new materials, chemicals, because the only place you can do that is in microgravity. So there are many aspects and challenges and opportunities that we can work with in space.
If you had the opportunity to go to space, what would you have wanted to do?
Look at the Earth. The Earth is the most magnificent place. And as of today, we only know about life in Earth, in the world. We don't know that there is life as we know it elsewhere. And I have the privilege to see images of the Earth every day because I manage the images that come from the space station. And our planet is just so beautiful, so magnificent. And so if I were to go to space, I would spend most of my free time just looking at the Earth.
I know that probably managing images is a hard thing to do, and there's been times where people have claimed of seeing other things, aliens or other things. How do you deal with that kind of stuff, with managing them?
Well, indeed, the human curiosity wants to always go beyond what you know, and I think that's part of why people may think there are things that in reality we have no proof that they exist. I've never seen an alien. I've never seen anything like that in images. I've never heard an astronaut talk about it. And in reality, if there are aliens, if there is life as it's sometimes portrayed, I'd like to know. I believe the folks at NASA would like to know, all my colleagues. Why? Because we're curious. We want to explore. So if there's evidence or if anybody has seen aliens, give us the information. Maybe we can study them. Maybe we can find out. But so far, nobody has come forward with real information.
There's a lot of new exciting technology coming out these days. For instance, Elon Musk's reusable rocket. What kind of new technologies are you excited about, and how do you think they can advance space exploration?
Well, that's a very good question. Elon Musk is an amazing guy. As you know, he did PayPal, he founded the electric car, Tesla, and he started working some 10, 15 years ago on SpaceX. And that is exactly what we in the government at NASA are trying to encourage and promote for private enterprises to start going to space and to commercialize space. Why? Because the government, the United States, we have been paying through NASA for the last 50 years to be in space, but we've only really, except for going to the moon in the 60s and early 70s, we've only been around the Earth. We've only been with humans 250 miles above the Earth. That's where the space station is. That's where the space shuttle used to go. And we need to go now further into the solar system. We need to take our resources and go to places like Mars. We need to develop the technology, and we need to commercialize space. And Elon Musk is one of the smart entrepreneurs that has understood that, and he now has a contract with NASA to deliver cargo, deliver goods, food, water, equipment to the space station. So he has a company like UPS or Federal Express. That's the way we look at it. And we buy from Elon Musk shipments to the space station, and that on the long run will cost less than if we, the government, would do it ourselves. So today we have SpaceX, we have Orbital, which is another company similar to Elon Musk's company. We have Sierra Nevada, who we just gave a contract, who will start supplying the space station. And they will also start building crew vehicles, new vehicles that will be able to bring our crew to the space station. So that's how we intend to commercialize low Earth orbit, so that with the government funds, we can use them to do bigger exploration, bigger things, go to Mars and beyond.
I know that recently there was a camera that you guys took up there. It was a GoPro that had taken some really good footage. Is there things that are, I guess you could say, catching up or with NASA in a way, with instead of designing, if it's the NASA designing their own cameras, the camera industry designing cameras now that NASA can just buy off the shelf and take, which would help lower costs?
Well, that's a very good question, and it would be kind of a follow-up question to the previous question, namely commercializing space and trying to do things in a more efficient way. As far as cameras, you know that the program that's going the strongest is the International Space Station, and it has been in space since first part was put up there in 1998. And the first crew we put up there in the year 2000. So a crew has been there almost 17 years. And we use on the space station as much commercial off-the-shelf things that is possible. We have laptop computers, And we have commercial cameras. We have Nikon D4 cameras for still cameras. We have Canon XF305s as camcorders. We have, I don't know if you guys are familiar with a RED camera, which is a cinema camera. It's a 6K camera, 6 times as high resolution as a regular HD camera. We have one of those on board. And we're trying to fly more and more just commercial off-the-shelf cameras as long as they're safe. So we go through a very rigorous process of certifying those cameras. And as you mentioned, we have GoPros. And our GoPros we use today to take out on spacewalks, EVAs. So what we do is we just put a cover on the GoPro and an attachment to the spacesuit and special buttons so that they can start and stop. That's pretty much what we do with them. And then they start the camera and record their spacewalks.
Staying on the topic of commercialization of space, where do you see that area going to in the near future? Would it be more tourism or potentially even like mining companies trying to mine asteroids?
I think both of those. Tourism, obviously, everybody, not everybody, but lots of people would like to go space. So there are companies like Virgin Galactica and other companies that are going to bring tourists to space here pretty soon. There is a fellow out of Las Vegas that is working with us, Mr. Bigelow, and he is one day his vision is to build a hotel in orbit. And actually, he's working with us already. We have a module attached to the space station that Mr. Bigelow built. So the question was, where do I see the commercial enterprises with tourism and other companies? They're going to grow. They must grow. And I see more opportunities for commercial companies like building other structures, perhaps habitats, transportation, and obviously tourism as well. But if you think about how much is a ticket to go and fly on Virgin Galactica? I don't know. How long is the flight? The flight may be one orbit, and Virgin Galactica doesn't go around the world. They just go to space and come down. It's a parabola. So you are in space 10 minutes, 20 minutes, and you pay good amount of money. Yeah. Who's got $1 million, $10 million, or even $500,000 for a 10-minute flight into space? I don't have that kind of money. So it is an industry, an upcoming industry, but I see more satellite companies, companies building structures in space, transporting things for us, for NASA, that have more of a commercial future in space.
Huh? What? Oh. As he was saying, I've actually heard about this. There's a concept called space elevator. I haven't heard much about it. Could you maybe explain a little more on it?
Well, I don't know exactly what we mean with a space elevator.
From what I know
a little bit about it.
Oh, okay.
So the concept of the space elevator that I'm familiar with is that we send this object into orbit and it's connected via a cable to Earth. And so we could use that cable in order to transport things into orbit.
Oh, like a zip line.
Yeah.
There are many concepts. Obviously, what we're describing here would be technologically challenging. Because there's friction on the lines, and it is viable. Sometimes new ideas like this can mature and become reality. I don't know much about the space elevator, but the way you just described it, it's an innovative concept. That's all I can say. It needs to be developed.
Um, with technology advancing so quickly, where do you see NASA 15, 20 years in the future, if not more?
Where I see NASA is taking bigger steps into first our planetary system. As you know, we at NASA we do many things. We knew from aeronautics, where we're still very active, working with planes, improving planes. Perhaps soon we'll have new supersonic commercial planes again, since we lost the Concorde. I mean, you guys probably familiar with the Concorde that used to fly passengers supersonically. That doesn't exist because it was not economically feasible anymore. But NASA is hoping to put more supersonic planes with passengers, and so we will continue developing aeronautics planes. Another thing we do is obviously humans in space, and our next step is definitely Mars, but it will take another 15, 20 years before we can get there. Elon Musk, SpaceX, he thinks he can get there sooner, and that's fine. We support that. But NASA will be concentrating into going deeper into the planets, the planetary system, our solar system, and we will continue exploring deep space with our telescopes.
Especially with the explosion of virtual reality these days, 3D imagery is taking on a bigger prevalence. Is NASA using 3D imagery in any way, especially with space?
Yes, and let me just make a distinction between virtual reality and 3D. What we call virtual reality is 360-degree imagery, so that the viewer feels immersed into the images. And so there's several ways to acquire a virtual reality imagery, but mainly it's wide-angle lenses, minimum two, if not more. The more the better with cameras, so that you can image all around you, and then you stitch the imagery together, and either through goggles or through screens, you can see around you. It's a fantastic technology, and we're about to put, well, we actually already have a couple of not very sophisticated cameras on board of the station, and we're about to put more sophisticated cameras up there for virtual reality. Just as something that's coming up, we have just imaged all the modules of the space station and stitched them together to do virtual reality on a screen, so that you can go inside the space station and look around by moving your mouse and see what the racks are above, under you, on the sides, in front, and the back. So we are doing virtual reality, and we will do video here in the near future. We're looking at partners to go up there and do that with us. And then you mentioned 3D. 3D, we've done quite a bit of 3D on board. It's mainly the effect where you can see images three-dimensionally, and you achieve that by acquiring the same image with two lenses, with two cameras, and then merging them together, and they're a little offset, and that gives the 3D effect. But you need either glasses or the right 3D screen for that. Now, 3D was very popular 6, 8, 10 years ago, and it was looked at that point as the next big step in imagery and television. But because you need the lenses, and because sometimes it's so hard to separate the camera, especially if your object is far away, that movement or that technology did not gain as much acceptance, and so today virtual reality has surpassed 3D, and you're going to see, I believe, 3D disappear a little bit. It's nothing new, 3D. When I was a kid, a long time ago, we had a little thing that was called the ViewMaster, which I don't know if you guys are familiar. It's still here. That's 3D. That's basically 3D. You're looking at one picture with one eye, the other eye, and they're slightly offset, and it fools your brain and makes you look at dimensionally.
So I've been told by command and control that we've got to blast off. So thank you very much for this for your time.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much, Carlos.
Yes, and stay in touch, and I'd like to see what you guys put together.
Okay.
All right.